Welcome. Welcome back to yet another video. Today we are going to discuss about the most commonly asked Java coding interview questions in the interviews. So this was one of the requests from the for subscriber who asked for coding interview questions. So basically this video is all about what kind of interview coding questions are asked, whether it is fresher, whether it is experienced, software engineers, team lead, software developers, full stack engineers, right? You name it. Like these are the common interview questions, the codings basically. And I would like to tell you that there are many platforms available like Lead Code, etc., right, where you can look out for video questions and answers, and also which will give you a platform to exercise and improve your coding knowledge. Okay, so I've just listed and compiled some of the commonly asked questions, and make sure please understand that this particular coding examples are uh, not using Java 8. Okay, so these are all core interview coding questions, and these are based on the while loop, for loops, which are basics to Java. It is not dependent on Java 8 features. Okay, let's look into the slides. Now, the very first program, what we commonly get in as a question, right? So, reverse a string. Now, interviewer, when he is trying to interview, right? So, along with Java core questions like the basics, OOPS principles, the collections, and other things, he will like to get your knowledge on the data structure, your productiveness, and also how you look at a coding problem, right? So any coding challenge it is given to you, he would like to understand your approach first, and then how you are writing. Okay, so coding is about writing the efficient code, clean code, concise code, and also in a concise way. Okay, so these all things are checked out when you are writing a code. Okay, and I've seen many interviews where virtual interviews, whether it is practical interviews, right, face to face, they would like to know the core approach first. Okay, then your efficiency of the code, the time complexity of the code, what is the shortest possible solution, right? So there can be n number of solutions, but what is the shortest and efficient solution? Okay, so try to focus on that part. Okay, so the interviewer might ask you, what is a program? How can you write a program to reverse a string without using built-in functions? Okay, so this is one of the way where they wanted to understand your own capability. What have you learned? How can you write a program? Are you hands-on or not? Because many interviews, when you're trying to attend an interview, they answer in a theoretical or a non-practical way, right? So for a developer, it's quite important that you have a hands-on experience, right? So from this, actually, they will try to judge you and get the idea. Okay. So reversing a string, the basically you will have a string, let's say tomato. Then you will have a variable defined as an reversed with a blank thing, and then you make use of the for loop. Okay. So here, if you see, we have taken the length out that particular string, and then we are iterating it over there. And if you see here, I'm trying to take an integer I for the loop, and then the length is exactly, if you go with the exact length, right, it is -1. Okay, so basically when you're dealing with that particular string, right, so it will be taken as that I. Okay, and then it is going to minus that particular. Okay, so it is going to the reverse. Okay, so starting from the max number till the, and it is going to reduce one by one. Okay, so it is going to check that, and then it is going to attach append it basically. Okay, so now the final string would be the system.out.println is reversed, if you see. So I've taken the input as tomato. Now we have initialized the empty reverse string to store the reverse string. Now we have a for loop which is again taking the length of the string, they decrementing it, and then decrementing it from the first character, right? Now each iteration it will index at that particular reversed. Okay, now finally it is going to print that. Okay, so this is quite simple, and I hope like many of them would be able to answer this. There would be a different video coming on for Java 8 for this for exactly same questionnaires that will be made little bit later, but here it is without using any built-in functions. Okay. Second, now this is the question asked, like if how we can find a prime number. So check if it is a prime number. The input will be provided, and check if it is a prime number or not. Okay. So write a program to check whether a given number is a prime number or not. Now, what is prime number? The numbers which are divided, basically greater than 1, and also which are divisible by itself, by 1, and also by itself, by, and it should not be divisible by any other numbers. Okay. So the numbers which are less than or equal to 1 are indirectly considered as non-prime. Okay. Now what happens in this particular program is that we have written a method over here which will check for that it is a prime number or not. Now then the loop, if it is going to see, if you see we have provided an a number, if loop, where it will return if it is, and is if it is smaller than no, if it is greater than 1, it will return as a false. So it's smaller than 1. Okay, so it will automatically return as 1. Okay, now in the for loop, if you see, we have taken the any divisor, okay, which is going to be found. Then if it is like if you see that there is an n percentage of I, and if it is going to be 0, okay, then that means that it is going to be divided. Okay, and the number is then it itself, it says that it is divisible by some number, right? Now so it returns false. Okay, so if there are no divisors are found, then it will return a false. Okay, so that's the way to identify. And also if you see in the for loop, I am taking the diamond that is square root of that particular number. Okay, square root of that particular number. Oh yeah, and then it is going to be this, because we are starting with the number from I is equal to 2, and then we are going to take the number of the square root of that particular number, which will be the maximum number. It should be smaller than that, and then we are going to increment it, right, until that particular number. Okay, so that's the approach. Hope you got this. Like just for an example, the input is provided 13. Okay, now it is true, right? If you see, 13 cannot be divided by any till if you count it from 1 to 12 or 13, right? You will not find any number which is going to divide by 13, right? So that's the logic. Now find the largest element in an array. Now what will happen is that, right, the interviewer will ask you that this is an input, okay, and find the number which is largest in it. Okay, so there are different ways to write it. Okay, now what happens is that I mean, I've written a method over here, so to find the max input. So what exactly the input is provided as an array. Okay, now what happens, we'll start by uh, passing the will consider the very first number as a maximum, because until now we are just going to we are not yet started to loop inside it and then check it out, right? So the very first number what we find in an array will be taking as a max number, and then what we'll do is that we'll iterate that particular for loop. So we have used a for each over here, so it will iterate over each number, and it will, the first number will be the number will be compared with the maximum number which was first taken as a zero element, right? Now if it is maximum, if it is the number which is in the for loop which is coming, it is greater than, then it will, the max number will be replaced by that particular same number. Okay, and ultimately what will happen is that ultimately we are going to find that particular the maximum number. If it is not greater than that, it will not replace it. Okay, so the number will be same. Until that, it will the each iteration of that particular element is looped in, it will check that. Okay, so this is one of the quickest and the easiest way to check that. Again, I'm saying that there are different ways also to find it, like in this actually what we can do is that we can sort it. Okay, so we can actually sort it with an using the comparable or comparator, and then ultimately if you see the one the very at the end, using the in the array, right, that can be taken up as an element of it. So there are different ways. There is no, I would say, yeah, the time complexity of course that might be changing, but there is no proper one solution for it, right? Now checking for a palindrome. Now what is palindrome? If you write some word and also if you reverse it and write it, it would be exact number and exact name, right? So it will not be different. Now just for an example, madam, madam, this is a palindrome, okay? So if you reverse it and write it also, the name should be will be same, right? Now I've written a method over here which will check, like, if it is a palindrome or not, and the input is string. Now if you see here, I've taken in variable which is taken in as an I, and then I've taken the j as in length of the total by minus one, right? So that basically in order to iterate that. Now what we'll do here is that we have written a while loop over here, and then I'm comparing I should be smaller than j. Basically, the idea here is that the the loop will try to take the characters from the string from the start and also from the end. So it will come from the same loop, the characters are taken from the first and from the last, one by one, and ultimately coming to the middle, right? So if it is exactly same, right, then what will happen is that it will return a true, or if it is not matching, at least, right? If you see the if loop is written over here. Now if it is not at all matching, let's say the first character and the very last character, if it is not matching, then itself is a it is not a palindrome, because uh, it is not matching only, because ultimately the idea is that palindrome should match, right? The first character, the last character, then for second character and the second last character, ultimately to the middle, right? Depends on the number of characters, right? So hope you got this particular example. The logic, finding a duplicate element in an array. Now there are different ways to do it, as I mentioned it. So here we are making use of an hash set. Now hash set, if you know, it doesn't allow any duplicate elements to be stored up. Okay, so that is the reason. And then and if you try to store some element, let's say you're trying to add something, so basically it will return as in true or false, right? If you're adding something, if it is already added, then it will if it is already added, then it will return false. And if it is false, that means that that particular loop will be accessible, and then it means that that particular element is a duplicate. Okay, so that will indicate whatever element, if you're trying to, let's say if it is iterating to 1, okay, then 2. Now if you see 2, whether for the first time it will not return false, right? It will return true. Sorry, it will return false, right? It is not added. So it will add up, and then it will happen. But the second time, when it encounters the second number, right, it will definitely returns a false, and then ultimately it will enter into that loop of if, and then it will return the duplicate element. Okay, so the add which returns an element which means that it is a duplicate. Okay, then ultimately it will print that if you see the 2 and 3 are repeated, and it is returning as an output. Fibonacci. Now if you look at this, the Fibonacci is nothing but the one which is 0, double, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and then naming it, right? So the way to calculate the initialize will go to the logic, right? So here what will happen is that, now if you look at this particular method which we have written, generate Fibonacci, the input is provided as 1. So what will the interview will say that I will give you the number, and up to till that I want the Fibonacci numbers to be printed. Okay. So what will happen here is that in the explanation, what I will try to tell you is that now we have first initialized A and B, that 0 and 1. Okay. So basically, now if I'm printing that particular, because A and B are suppose it will be starting, right? Now then it comes the logic will be applied. Then I will initialize a variable inside the for loop with 2, and then I will the input whatever it is provided, it should be smaller than, right, the loop I mentioned, the basic the length, right, the loop, how many times it will iterate, and then I will increment it. But basically, if you see, I'm trying to add up with the previous element with the next element, right? So if you see here, the a plus b, I'm first adding it, right? So I'm adding 0 plus 1, right? It's basically, it is going to be 1 only. Now the next item I'm going to take up is that now a is equal to, I'm assigning that particular a to that particular b element, right? The whatever the b element it is right now, okay? And then because b is what now 1, right? Now I will take the b is equal to the next element, whatever the next element was, what, 1. Now I'll add up this particular in the next iteration, right? It will be 3, right? Then I will add it. What I will do is that 1 plus 1, it will again, it will be true, right? Because from that, now again it will, in the next loop it will go with that 2 plus 1, it will be again 3. Now it is again, it will go in that particular same manner, 2 plus 3, right? So it will replace that particular a and b in the next coming up of things, and then it ultimately go and incrementing until the maximum number, okay? So this is how the Fibonacci sequence is generated. Now finding a factorial of a number, any number which is let's say example 5, right? So all the numbers which are previous to that, right, we have to take that each one of them, and you have to multiply by that, and then you will find the ultimate number, that is right. So in this, what will happen is that we will make use of a recursive function, okay? So if you see here, I've written a function over there. Underneath, if you see in the written logic, I am just checking that if it is n is equal to 0, then it is 1, right? And then what will happen is that n is equal to into the factorial. So I will just take the n minus 1, and then I will multiply. Again, I will call that particular number, and then it will check the same logic. Now, what will happen is that, let's say 5 is passed. Now, 5 into the factorial number, that is 5 minus 1, the 4, then 4 will be again, 4 will be passed up again over there. Now what will happen, again that number will be taken up, and then it will be 3 minus, and then it will be ultimately, it will be taken up, right? So this is how it will going to multiply multiple times, right? So it's a recursive step. Now merging two sorted arrays, okay? So basically there are two things in here. One is merging two arrays, then it is asking for sorted arrays, okay? So the very first thing is that we have to take the length of this particular two arrays, okay? The two arrays has to be provided, and now I have initialized couple of variables inside it. I've taken while loop, and then I've taken that particular I and j, and then taking the length of it, right? So what will happen over here is that, the if you see the logic over here, I'm trying to make use of this particular ternary operations, where if you see, if I'm trying to compare the very first element and the second, if it is smaller than very first element, then it will again go, and then it will add it in the next in the same array, it will increment and add it, right, the position, okay? If it is not, then it will again add it in the second array, right? So here if you see in the while loop, it will just first check for that I element, and then the length, then ultimately it will try to see like what it can assign those particular array the position, or which was in the position array 1, right? It will assign it to the result one. Now in this second while loop also similar logic is applied over here, and ultimately the result will have the merged sort array. So this is how the sorting is happening, and also incrementing the and adding it will in the single array, okay? Now the array will be provided, and he will say that I wanted to find the missing number, the shortest possible solution to find that particular number, okay? uh, just for an input, right? Let's say the array is given, and it is 1 2 3 1 2 4 and 5, the three number is missing, okay? Though this particular it is smart, and we are able to identify, but programmatically, let's say the array is like million, right? In that way also this logic should be applicable, right? So similar way, I've written a method over here. I pass the input array, and then I'm giving the number n, right? So should contain like int is equal to n, which should contain number 1 to 5, okay? So two things you have provided, the array and the number which will be starting from 1 to 5, right? What will happen is that if you see the logic sum, I'm trying to see n is equal to n and then n into n plus 1 and division by 2. So basically what will happen with this particular logic, right? So whatever I'm trying to number I have provided, let's say 5 into and then 5 plus 6, 6 5 30 divided by 15, right? So here if you see, right? So then what we'll do is that we'll for loop over here, we'll for loop and then we'll take that particular each number. Now it will try to minus that particular number from it, right? Ultimately if you see, you'll find those particular number. Okay, as I mentioned, this is not the one of the only solution, there are different ways to it. Now if you see, the formula for it is that then into n plus 1 divided by 12. So this is one of the way to calculate the sum of the first natural numbers, and then we are going to separate the each element of an array from the calculated sum. The remaining value will be the missing one. Okay, this is how we calculate it. Okay, sorting an array using the bubble sort. Now bubble sort is something, it's one of the data structure and algorithm what we have used, right? So here if you see the 60, the input array is 64, 34, 25, 12, 22, right? So ultimately here actually what we are trying to do is that we are incrementally trying to increase the, so we are going to compare the adjacent number element and then we have to step the order, right? So this is done for the each element over here, and the reducing the number from each pass to the largest number. So ultimately from the lowest number to the highest number, it will be sorted. So until the array is ended, right? Until the whole array is sorted. So we are going to sort that particular from the lowest in the ascending order, right? So the logic written over here, we have basically used the for loop and also make two for loops and then make use of the if loop, right? And then we are trying to replace it. So this is how we are going to compare, and then if you see the if logic, we are comparing it with the element, with the next element, right? And then we are trying to see, we have introduced a temporary variable over here, we are swapping that particular element over here and then ultimately storing it in the array, right? So this is how the bubble sort works. Hope this video was helpful to you. As I already mentioned, this is not using any Java 8 features, but it's a core while loop, file for loop we have make use for each, right? So hope this video was helpful and also you are able to understand what kind of questions are asked in it. If this video was helpful to you, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Also share this video with the people who are attending interviews and also who are in need of it. Okay, thank you for watching.